Good morning, Wesleyan Chapel family. Kyle here. Josh asked me to step in and do a morning meditation here during his ongoing study of Judges. And he's asked me to tell you guys the story of Deborah that can be found in chapters 4 and 5 in that book of Judges. One thing I want to talk about before I dive into the story here is something that we can often forget about the Bible is how many great stories are found in it. Just exciting and interesting stories. Sometimes that can fall by the wayside a little bit just because we can tend to be so familiar with the events and the characters. And not that it's not important to go back and revisit those events that we're familiar with, but one of the great things about doing a study in a book like Judges is these are stories that most of us are not nearly as familiar with, and some of us may not have heard before in a very, very long time. So we get to experience these with a real freshness. And I just want you to relish the opportunity during this study, both today and in the continuing videos that Josh and others do, to get to pull lessons and experience these stories for the first time or the first time in a long time. And yeah, what a great opportunity that is to experience the literature and the excitement and the interest of the Bible. So this is a really cool story, I think. I've been very excited to talk to you guys about this week, the story of Deborah. So a few things I'm going to point out during this story is there are three very interesting, unique, and gracious reactions to things that happen or things that are said that I think are really important for us, even in today's modern society, even talking about these historical events from way back thousands of years ago. Deborah comes right after Ehud and Shamgar, and surprise, surprise, since the Israelites are between judges, they sort of fall back into their ways of sin, and they fall out of the favor of God. As Josh mentioned, this is a pattern we see over and over again in the book of Judges, and really throughout the Old Testament. So the Israelites have fallen into the hands of the king of Canaan. And the big character that is laid out at the beginning of this story is the Canaanite general Sisera. He's portrayed as this force to be reckoned with. He's this ruthless general, and it says that he has 900 iron chariots. So he's this very tough guy who's in charge of a big, powerful army. So enter Deborah, a prophetess, and she enters and finds Barak, Barak. He is an Israelite general, Israelite leader. And she says to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, take with you 10,000 men and lead the way to Mount Tabor. I will lure Sisera, the commander of Canaan's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give them into your hands." And Barak's response here is the first of a few very interesting reactions. Barak says to Deborah, "Deborah, if you go with me, I will go. But if you do not go with me, I won't go." And there's no description of the emotion of his response or what place that's coming from. But to me, it seems to come from a place of fear. Barak knows Sisera. He knows the name. He knows his chariots. He knows how powerful his army is. And he's not overly eager to go there by himself and take him on head to head. And we can imagine that Deborah's reaction could very potentially be harsh here. She could say, like, "You have little faith," or like, "How dare you not trust the word of the Lord?" But what she says to him is, "Very well, I will go with you. But because of the way you are going about this, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will hand Sisera over to a woman." So super interesting reaction there as well. Not maybe that anger or condemnation that we would expect, but a very gracious, "I will go with you, but since you're not doing exactly what God has told you to do, you're really not going to get the glory for this." And Barak has no response to this. He accepts it, and he is gracious to have Deborah's, it doesn't say that in there, but I imagine that he is gracious to have Deborah's company with him on this battle. So the Israelite army goes, they face the Canaanites head on, and they defeat Sisera's army with God on their side. But Sisera escapes. He escapes to a nearby village, and in that village, Sisera is known, and the Canaanites have friendly relationships in this village. So Sisera thinks he is safe there, and he goes to the tent of a woman whose name is Jael. Jael comes out of her tent to meet Sisera and says to him, "Come, my lord, come right in. Do not be afraid." And Sisera enters her tent, and she puts a blanket over him. Sisera says, "I'm thirsty. Please give me some water." And Jael opens a skin of milk and gives him a drink. And it's interesting, the following chapter is a song. And in that song, we learn that the milk that she gives him was curdled. So he asks for water, and she turns around and gives him curdled milk, which seems very insulting, but not nearly as insulting as what's about to happen, because Sisera says to Jael, "Stand in the doorway. If anyone comes by and asks you, 'Is anyone here?' say no." But as soon as he falls asleep, Jael picks up a tent peg and a hammer, goes up to him while he's sleeping, and drives the tent peg through his temple and into the ground, and he dies. So very violent, very intense there. Barak comes and finds Jael, and Jael says, "Come, I will show you the man you're looking for." And she shows them the scene. And Jael, just as Deborah has predicted, is the one who sort of receives the glory for defeating this great general Sisera. Just like Deborah said, Sisera the Lord will hand Sisera over to a woman, and indeed, that has come to pass. But interesting reaction, the third. Barak displays no bitterness. He displays no resentment. He's not angry that he's not the one who got the glory for defeating the general, even though he led his army to this great victory. In fact, the following chapter is a song, as I mentioned, that Deborah and Barak sing together. And in this song, there's a whole stanza or verse about Jael and what an amazing thing she did, and how she is deserving of the glory that she is receiving. So yeah, I just one more time point to those three incredibly gracious reactions. When Barak is afraid, Deborah does not get mad at him for his fear or say that his faith is not strong enough. She says, "I will go with you." When Barak's, opportunity for glory and fame and fortune is taken away from him, he does not display bitterness or resentment. He's happy that his people have won this battle, and he is happy to give the praise where it's due to Jael. Super interesting story, and I think we can take a lot away from that, of just these two gracious reactions, when it would have been so easy for both of these people to be much more harsh and much more upset. They chose not to be. So that's the story of Deborah. If you want to read that for yourself, there's several details that I skipped over, and the song is very long and interesting in chapter 5. Hope that you all have a great day, and I look very much forward to this continuing study of Judges.